a question for Aaron, actually, so that I don't forget. So right now, what are some of the most important things that the network needs so that we can build a more efficient, I would say, dApps, or I would say DAOs?
If we want broader experimentation, like if we want more people experimenting how to build apps in DAOs, it's really SDKs, which is what's coming out in the Wallet Plus paper. There are very few teams that are capable of really building great user experiences right now. And we need to open that up and make it easier. And then once it is easier, we need to just document the hell out of it and educate people on how to use it. Other ecosystems do this pretty well. And right now, to build any sort of good application in this space, you've got to put in the time and become an expert. There are arguably no beginner developers in this space. Like it's just, you can't do anything until you're no longer a beginner. So in my opinion, it is the SDKs and the core technologies that developers need to build these applications.
You're a very rare engineer character who's actually doing the communication work. I feel like there's that tendency among engineers to just retreat into the code and be like, I'll just, it's like kind of an artist mode too. Like, I'm just going to like work on my sculpture and then people will see it and they'll understand. But in blockchain, that is problematic just because these are communities, not like audiences. And so, so I fear when teams that are needed like retreat like into far off places and stop or like diminish communications. I know communication does have a negative impact on output, but output isn't like the only, like it's not like at the apex of all, consideration.
I think DPoS in general kind of forced that out of both me and Scott being the partner I founded Greymass with, because we were both like, we had to be out there to be elected. We had to interact with the community to maintain our status and our funding. So it really forced us not to retreat, despite how much we wanted to retreat. And that's, in my ideal world, where block producers are these crazy value creators or something else in a DPoS-like system where you have to be out there presenting your ideas, even if it's not block producers, is where I was going with that. Is it forces you to not stay in your cave and build that thing, because to like receive your funding, you need to continually be out there and doing it. And then like interacting with like Steam It Inc. Like they had this massive pre-mine and they didn't need anything. They would just like retreat into their hole and do things. And then they'd emerge from their hole with their sculpture, as you said, and the community look at it and be like, what the hell is that? And it's like they didn't have that feedback cycle because of that retreating that happened. And so for all the ugly things about DPoS, like that might be one of the good ones, is that you have people that are forced to come out and continually communicate, because otherwise, like, you can't just go back to your cave and keep working. Like, you won't be a block producer anymore or a value creator anymore.
Something that has been coming up in my mind a lot lately too is just the whole agile versus waterfall development methodology, which seems so relevant, especially in a community of, comprised of a large number of coders. And the idea that you could just hide away and then come out with some big, it's all there kind of like reveal without having that back and forth that agile kind of indicates might be a lot smarter, where you're like, how about this? Is this good? What about this? Like getting that back and forth with your client or with your community or whatnot. And it's surprising to see
me being a video game nerd, Blizzard and Overwatch, one of their huge games right now, they started with Titan, and they went into this hole in this Project Titan, which was what they had. They developed just completely in this bubble, did not work out, project failure. Funny enough, I was actually interviewing to be on the Titan team back in, I don't even remember what year it was, but I got a call as I was getting on the plane to leave California after my interview, which lasted like 2 days. And as I get this call on the plane, they're like, sorry, we can't hire you. And I was like, oh, that sucks. And then the plane took off and I got home. And then the news broke that the project was canceled. And I was like, oh, well, that's a little bit different. But there's this, the reason I'm going down this rabbit hole is there's this video that goes through the history of this project, the failure that they went through, and then the rebirth into something that was successful, being Overwatch. And if you just listen to these developer stories, there's probably like a 5 or 10 minute portion of this video where if you listen to what they're saying and apply it to EOS and EOS.io, like the through line is incredibly similar. And like we have this opportunity and we could arguably learn from the failures that they had on how we could recover. But it really touches on everything we've been talking about for the last like 10 or 15 minutes. When I mentioned it in EOS Gov, it was really just a quick note or whatever, but like that thought has really stuck with me. I've mentioned it to a few people. I'm mentioning it to you guys now. I should really just like share the YouTube clip like at that second and then be like, listen to this and think EOS, you know, because
do share it. We'll include it in the show notes too.
Yeah.
Isn't that where the phrase "you're only as good as your last game" came from?
Yep. And if you've heard that being piped around, that's true. And I guess that is a great way to kind of segue back to what we were talking about, because if you do have the tendencies to go off into your bubble and then come back out with something that you're like, oh, like I did this thing over these past years and here it is. This is this great thing that I didn't consult anybody on. Like, if that fails, that's going to be your reputation. You are only as good as that last project you just did because there was no communication before or after that. So EOS is kind of in that state, and arguably Dan is kind of in that state where he is only as good as his last game at this point, which at this point is a failure. I mean, we're working on recovering that. Like the failure was probably, I don't know, November with all that drama, December. And we're trending upwards again, but that it's really something to be aware of. Is that if you are going to retreat, like your perception from people is going to be that you really are only as good as your last project. And until you go out and then come back with something new, like that's going to be the reputation that sticks with you. So I'll definitely share that video. Maybe I'll just post it in chat with a small message or something and expand upon that.